On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. I think for a number of years, more and more people have started to question the big establishment, this behind-the-scenes part of the government that seems to have a two-tiered system, seems to be unfair for the normal person, and then kind of all the celebrities and all the wealthy people and all the movie stars are all a part of this group. All the ultra-elite are part of this group, and the rest of us are supposed to go along with it. Well, at one point, they approached a billionaire and said, hey, you've got a clean record, you're patriotic, people seem to like you. Are you interested in maybe trying to help us fix what's going on, to stop this takeover of our country? And that individual said, yes, I'm willing to do this. And they said, you understand this will put your family at risk and the safety of you guys at risk. And after thinking about it, the decision was made to move forward anyways. So here we are during the last election, 2016, where Donald Trump was voted in. Donald Trump was immediately hated, immediately went after with the Russia collusion, everything under the sun. He barely announced prior to, right, just 2015 or whatever, and finally decided, all right, I'm going to do this. Has been attacked the entire way. They saw what is happening right now coming from a mile away. And a lot of us, I think, feel like something's not right. We feel like something's not right. We're seeing evidence and people talking about some things that definitely don't seem right. And yet it doesn't seem like anything's happening yet. First and foremost, before anything legally can begin, the votes must be counted and then actually filed as counted votes. Not the media claiming that somebody won, which is what's going on right now. The media has claimed a victory when all of these states have not officially called it. Now again, once the official declaration occurs, or at least they claim to be done counting votes, that is when legal objections can then be filed. So this is a process that has to happen. They're ready. They're lined up. We definitely have a very powerful group and machine at work against us. But that's what's facing the sheeple. This has been preparing for a long time. This alternative media source has been prepared for a long time. Started back not too far before this. This is the 97th Post, November 5th, 2017. The end of October when all these intelligence drops began. Now, I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they're wrong. There's been all sorts of crazy paths through all that. But one thing that really jumped out is the idea of game theory and trying to understand the bigger picture of what's happening right now in front of us. There's a very powerful media controlled by the same people who are trying to take power. And the reason is they want to be able to do all their crazy progressive socialist ideals. And they don't want anybody to fight this. In fact, right now, if you're not for Biden, you're completely against him, obviously, which is pretty much how the case is anyway. And you're kind of being labeled the enemy of the state right now. And there's nobody out there defending us except each other. And there's lots of us. Now, again, Post 97, game theory. Define. What is this, right? This big picture. There's a larger picture at work. This isn't just one battle. A lot of people base a lot of things on battles. They base a lot of things based off of the optics. There is a lot of things going on. So, again, defining the bigger picture that there is a kind of a transition or a retaking back control of our country from those who have had control for a while now. And we're planning on taking absolute control. And this has possibly been stopped. We'll see how everything plays out. Biden may very well become the president. There are still the Senate and things in place, judges and everything else that should make it hard for the progressives to continue pushing. But I do not think we're at that point yet because, one, all the states have not officially called it yet. Two, all the lawsuits have not played out, and we will give examples of all this. So the big picture, this is kind of the end of it. And a lot of people, I think, felt like, well, once the election happened, that was the end of it. And it's like, no. We still have months more of this craziness. So that's why we've got to just kind of understand that this is something we're going to have a little more long endurance and longevity for. So the big picture. And why is this relevant? Because we need to understand what we're up against. There are moves and counter moves. The media was always known to be on this side. They knew the censorship was going to happen at this. All these things were in place. Remember, they have the emergency alert system where Trump can text. He's not going to use that until he's got something major. It was always related around the election and possibly declaring victory via that. Who knows? But there's a lot of avenues that they have put in place. There is the video I just did yesterday, which I highly recommend. It'll show at the very end, top left corner. It'll be my most recent video. It's an awesome video, and I really went into some great length explaining how I think there's been security added to the ballots, the mail-in ballots, as well as the in-person. And I think significant security has been done. In fact, I had my brother shared another tweet with me where it was showing people in a skiff on the day of election supposedly monitoring what was going on. There's been questions of software that had glitches. There's a lot that is going on. There's a lot that people know for sure. Some of it's being leaked to the public intentionally. Some of it's being withheld from the media for a reason. So again, false flags. Now this, back in the day, we were having a lot of shooters, but it's kind of similar. They're talking about the identities, shooters in history, shooters' family, MS-13, blah, 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 right? So kind of get past all that stuff. Now they're talking about forcing narratives. This is where it actually kind of gets relevant again. And again, this was just an old post, so it's just finding the relevance within it is important. But the narrative. Right now, the narrative is that Trump supporters just aren't accepting loss, even though there's not been a declaration made by the official sources. This is, again, the media. The media who is completely left-leaning, who has been 92% against Trump. I just brought that up to a friend, and he's like, well, yeah, because, of course, Trump's such a horrible person. I'm like, and I started listing off all the things that he's done. Really? So it's the narrative that is causing so much of this divide right now. As much as they want to say it's Trump, Trump's who's blamed. Trump is the face of the evil one. And so thusly, the people that have decided they hate him say he's the reason we're divided. It's not Trump. It's the 92% of the coverage that won't even give this guy a chance to do anything good at all. It's like when they find 10,000 votes and not one of them is for Trump. They just magically find a box of votes and not one of them is for Trump. That's the same thing. The constant attention by the media that nothing he does is good, in my opinion, is what invalidates them. So they have called the election, not official sources, and Biden can say, yep, we want it as much as he wants. And that's, of course, how we all knew this was going to play out. Once the final votes are tallied, which I think in some cases they're going to try to drag out as long as they can, for a lot of reasons, because they also want to see this constitutional continuity of government thing happen. That's what they're really hoping for. And again, losing seats in the House has hurt that chance to an extent, and they certainly didn't take ownership of the Senate. I think I don't know what the final votes are going to be in that, because some of those races seem like they changed a little bit too. So again, the narrative, understanding the background, understanding the history, and understanding why this is relevant. Now, what's funny, and this is going to seem oddly not relevant, but it is. So let's get into the Flynn portion of this post and understand why it is relevant. So why is it relevant? Flynn. What is Flynn's background? Flynn's background was intelligence. Flynn was involved in intelligence all over the place. What was his rank? He was a general, 3rd-star general. What was he involved at the intel ops? He did all sorts of stuff that was involved in these counterinsurgencies and all this understanding of what was going on. What did he probably become privy to? This plan to take over. He got in trouble by Obama. They talk about that, right? So they get down into here. We'll just keep going. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So Flynn, what was his rank? He was general, special privileges. He had access to a lot of information. He knew what was going on. Why is this relevant? Because he knew what the plan was for 2020. Set up? Possibly. Who wins? The deep state. Who becomes exposed? The deep state. Well, who wins is the people if we figure this out, but who's trying to win by keeping all of this from the truth, from the public? Flynn is still not free yet from the judge. Judge Sullivan is still keeping him behind locked door, basically. So, again, who knows where all the bodies are buried? Flynn. He knows a lot of this information. Of course, he's talked about it already. Just because the judge hasn't freed him, he's talked and told and let everybody know. And in fact, probably approached Trump early on for those reasons. Who had access? This guy. What is military intelligence? Now, understanding the way military intelligence works, it's very planned. It's very far out. It's not something they just willy-nilly throw together and then go. These things are planned, counter-planned, run through, trained, and then they go. I mean, nothing happens quickly. I mean, it can. They're prepared and trained in all sorts of scenarios, but the reason it can kind of go quickly is because they've spent months and weeks training all of these thought-out scenarios that the military intelligence have created. They're crazy, awesome, and ingenious in how they come across things. It's, again, frightening how easy it is for us to kill people. But who was part of the military intelligence during the Barack Obama term? Who was fired during that same term from military intelligence, mind you? Why is this relevant? Remember, he probably wasn't happy about it. Maybe he went to somebody else and Brennan caught him with the hammer, whatever the case was. They knew that he was going to, essentially Trump, to inform him what was going on. And they didn't like that. They considered him working with the Russians because that's who the enemy was, right? At least for anybody that grew up in the 80s, right? Still blame the Russians. So again, why is that relevant? Because they're still using that same talking point. So reread complete crumbs. And so to paint the picture, let's see, disinformation exists and is necessary. It's one thing that's been very upsetting to a lot of people in this whole world, is they don't like the fact that a lot of this stuff has not been verified yet. This whole future-proving past is frustrating because you see these quotes and you think they're talking about something sooner than that, and then you see activities happen. I think they're looking for leaks occurring. Who's talking about this? What little secret game rooms are communicating about these things? There is all sorts of information that's flowing that they are aware of, that Flynn is aware of. And here's where they bring up 10 days of darkness, war versus good versus evil. This is a roadmap of the big picture here. Review the posts. I mean, all we can do, right? These crumbs are not just for the regular political views. This is the deeper views. This is what's been going on, and right now the public is being informed of one thing. Friends of yours might very well be approaching you and thinking you are nuts because of the side of this that you're on. Again, I've got some information coming that shows that a lot more has happened than maybe you are aware. So again, the silent ones are doing a lot. The darkness, a lot. In this 10 days of silence and darkness, a lot is happening. Others were monitoring. And they knew they would be. They knew this. They had stuff prepared for the 2018 election. Watch my last video. They had stuff prepared for the 2018 election. They then had it, again, it was tested for the 2018, right? So that's why they were ready. And then for 2020, it went full bore. And they saw this mail thing coming. And I would say, based off of military intelligence, because the deep state uses similar planning, I still think COVID was something that had been put in planning phases a while before it happened. I don't think they just said, okay, we got to stop the election. No, I think it was always kind of in motion. Again, I don't think these things just happen easily. But they talk about, again, instructions, which is, again, trying to give us a little bit of a breadcrumb. Hey, stuff's going to happen. Be aware of this no matter what. And again, they have been saying this for a while. They've been saying this for a while. Nothing can stop what's coming. Truly. Don't think what's here right now is some surprise. It's not. Military intelligence, they saw this coming. 5D chess, think of all the things that have worked perfectly thus far, or at least really well. Yes, we haven't seen the indictments yet. A lot of things haven't happened yet. I do think if this election is allowed to happen fairly and legally, that the results, especially when challenged by a court, I think in some key battleground states might change. There could be enough votes of odd little glitches that could actually alter the outcome for some states. Those some states could actually alter the outcome of the actual election. So a lot is coming. And they talk about, again, Snow White and Godfather 3. Again, I think Godfather 3 probably my guess, I'm just going to, and I have no knowledge whatsoever if this is true or not, just speculating because it's fun. Godfather 3, my guess is Trump becoming president. The bigger picture, the bigger operation would probably be called Godfather 3, and that's probably bringing Trump in, making him president, and getting through all this stuff so this transition can occur. Snow White, not sure how that all plays out. Seven Dwarfs, could be some of the leaders in Congress. Who knows? That one's less fun. But I want to point out something really quick, and we're going to totally spin through the rest of this, because I think the important part was spelling out the 10 days, where that comes from, and why I think it's relevant now. A lot of times we've said, the 10 days is starting now, and then 3 days later, Trump's like, bah. All right, that wasn't 10 days. But what is coincidental about 10 days? So the election was Tuesday the 3rd, right? Tuesday the 3rd, count that whole day. I'm not going to count it as one, because you got to get through the election, and then the count begins, right? And as soon as the election happened, they were already starting to call stuff. They literally, Tuesday night said, hey, we're going to stop counting. And then when we get back up in the morning, we'll let you guys know. We'll all get together, and then we'll start counting again. And then oddly, overnight, a whole bunch of crazy votes showed up that put Biden in the lead, when it wasn't necessarily looking like that day of the election as much anyways. So day one, in my opinion, is Wednesday the 4th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Friday the 13th? Is that a coincidence? I mean, that's got to be a coincidence, right? Just a coincidence that 10 days after the election happens to be a Friday the 13th. I mean, when stars align, and I think this is good versus evil. Like, this is way bigger than just an election. And I really do think there's some truth to that. And I think we've been seeing a lot of people are starting to wake up to the reality of what's going on. So understanding, it's important to note, Trump issues a statement, will not concede, this election is far from over. Now, is Trump allowed to say this? No. He, in fact, says, I won this election by a lot, and Twitter instantly blocks him. Puts a giant filter over it, says that official sources may not have called the race when this was tweeted. Now, Twitter's saying official sources, even though right now Biden and Kamala made their proclamation not due to official sources, due to media sources. Yet they can tweet their victory all they want. Again, understand the way the game's played. This is not a surprise. They didn't just go, oh man, Twitter censored us. We thought we were going to get through, we were going to sneak our President Trump's information through Twitter. No, they knew. They've been pushing this. I think they're surprised they didn't start censoring them sooner, but I think they knew if they did it too soon, it would even affect the mail-in vote. So they played this game out very carefully on both sides. But this was not a surprise. And Trump is basically saying, not basically, he's exactly saying, hey, no, this election's not over as far as I'm concerned, and I am not conceding. Which, of course, the left is like, well, he's just not accepting the facts. This is the facts. Well, the facts are not actually out yet. And I think he's even quoted saying somewhere that if the facts come out after all the legal ballots are counted and he still loses, he will be happy to concede. But with the fact that there has seemed to have been some glitches and possible shenanigans, again, when you find a box of votes, and maybe there's 10,000, I'm making that number up because there's been a bunch of examples, and some of those numbers are actually big, but 0 people vote for Trump, and 100% of them vote for Biden, that is impossible, period, and extremely hard to believe. And on top of that, they're finding, I guess in some of these cases, not all, some of the shenanigans, that they've actually found the ballots are only worried about the presidential candidate and nothing else. They're not voting any of the local election stuff. Also weird, very suspicious. Like a lot of people may not vote for the people or might vote for the people, might vote for propositions and the president, but nothing else? That's strange. So there's a lot of interesting situations that are happening and reason why people are saying this is a little hard to believe. Now, another thing that's proving to be, I think, a surprise to a lot of people, and again, always peaceful, I think is important to say, but this isn't over. And this basically Trump supporters are starting to pour into capitals and saying, this isn't right. You're not letting people in to view the counting. This is not an open and transparent process, and it should be. And you want us all just to take your word for it or the media's word for it and not actually let us see with our own eyes, not actually let us send in our own people rather than trust your people to give us some truth back. And these things aren't happening, even when actual Supreme Court votes or the circuit courts of the states are saying you legally have to let people in, and they're still like, yeah, so we're not gonna. And there's video of people doing this. That's illegal. That's not legal. I mean, just pure and simple. Now, I, again, heard people on the left that are saying, well, you should just accept the results. No, we shouldn't. There's some strangeness that's going on. Fortunately, there's some legal precedents that we have and are being utilized. And so this is probably not going to be decided anytime soon. This could take a month. This might take 2 weeks. I've heard people say, Monday, something's going to happen. I mean, yeah, I'm sure every friggin' day something's going to pop up in the news. Again, the news is something that is painting a picture intentionally. And the 10 days of darkness right now, because Trump can't even tweet stuff, is actually happening. And I think after that will probably be, I'm hoping, enlightening. And again, I think this was all planned from the get-go. A GoFundMe site. They actually nuked a donation page over voter fraud investigation. I think they were trying to put some money together for a legal group. And this, again, they killed the page. It's just one more example of how it seems to be slanted towards one side. And in fact, maybe they didn't like to use the word fraud, and they could have changed that to irregularity or glitches or whatever. GoFundMe could have helped with that rather than just saying, nope, sorry, you're down. So again, interesting. Now, some of the things that should give some hope is one, like in California at least, some House seats I think changed, but in the overall picture, some House seats have changed. Here in California, at least with the Uber Lyft thing, which affects my girlfriend a lot more than it does me, frankly, but this whole Proposition 22 that had to do with whether or not you could be a 1099 and work for Uber or Lyft, meaning I can drive whenever I want. I just log into the app and I've got 2 hours. Okay, cool. I'm going to work a couple hours and see if I can get any money. What they were trying to do is pass a proposition that would force Lyft and Uber to make everybody an employee, which would then force you to work a schedule, which would also get you more money per hour, which would in turn actually cause people that have to take the service to be charged a great deal more for the driving than they currently do. Fortunately, the people have spoken, and in a lot of cases, in California, every single progressive proposition was voted down. Every single one of them were voted down. It kind of shows people are not ready for some of the craziness that they're talking about. Something also interesting and positive. Michigan lawmakers subpoena state election officials in rare weekend hearing. Of course, one of the battleground states, Michigan. Just one more example of where stuff is coming to fruition. Things are happening. And in fact, from a government standpoint, because it's so important and it's an election, actually happening very quickly. Like stuff is saying, all right, stop what you're doing. We've got to figure out who's going to be the president before we do anything else. So it's extremely important. Now, also talking about how people are not happy with the lockdowns, not happy with this push that the institution seems to very much support, at least over here. Biden's probably going to push more lockdowns. They've already talked about that, which would just crush this economy. So there's clashes now in Greece. So Spain, Greece, we've got France. We've had, I think Germany's had rioting. We've had England, they've had not rioting, but protesting. People are very, very upset about the lockdowns. They are tired of it. And here is one more country in Europe, the shining example of how we're all supposed to be, and even they're getting sick of it. People are not happy about what is going on. Now, again, this is just to round out the final thing, and then we're going to do a quick, short little prayer that I think is super appropriate at this point in time. But a former top State Department official, Trump planned this vote fraud sting, and Dems took the bait. And I really do think this ties back into my last video. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it already, because I really do think it comes into all the blockchain, all the technology they put, the barcodes and QRC codes that they did, possibly the watermarks. There's a lot of aspects that went into just the vote by mail portion. And on top of that, some of the glitches in the electronic systems were probably monitored real time. And I'm sure that evidence will come out when the time is right. Again, you've got to start a legal process, then an investigation can happen, then you present your evidence and facts, and that is when judges make their case. This will most certainly end up in front of the Supreme Court. It's almost a guarantee. That was why it was so important to get Coney Barrett in there before the election was done, and that is why it was fought so ferociously. This has been a plan. I know it's scary right now. I agree. I was freaked out for a couple days. Like, I really had to find my balance. I actually have still gotten to the point, I don't watch news at all during the day anymore. No more TV news. I can't take it. It fires me up. I can't take it. Literally do not turn it on. I've got other channels that are maybe like cooking. I love watching the Cooking Network. I'll have that on, Beat Bobby Flay or something. I'll watch that all day. Not watching any of the election stuff. I'm going online. I'm pulling news that way, and it doesn't aggravate me the same way as the news does. Just be wary of where you're getting your information, and be very wary of how much time you're spending in front of the idiot box right now, because they're telling you what to feel and think. It's time to step back and realize there's something larger at work here. And that takes us into Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me besides the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Remember this, folks. This is where we're at in society, in evolution as far as our souls. Graduation time is here, folks. There's a lot going on right now historically that many of us are just tied up in this political thing. Trust me, there's larger things happening around us at the same time. This is just meant to keep people busy while the crazy stuff is occurring as well. We'll talk about that more as it seems appropriate. I think right now we need to get through this little bit of a hiccup in our history. And once we do, and once we move forward, even if Biden wins, once we can get past this and move forward, we will move forward, and things are changing for the better. We are winning for the rights of freedoms, and we're not certainly willing to back down on those, are we? No. We're at this place right now where I think a lot of us realize now is the time to be looking at this and facing this and stepping up to the plate, if you will. Remember, divided, we are weakened heavily. United, we are very, very strong. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.